Hello, my name is Jim Crash Irons, local 80 grip here in Hollywood, California, and creator, co-producer, and host of That's a Wrap. I've worked on such movies as From Dusk Till Dawn, Jackie Brown, Spawn, Peppermint, and such TV shows as 6 Feet Under, Malcolm in the Middle, Weeds, and Big Little Lies, just to name a few. The vast majority of interviews at the end of Blu-ray discs and DVDs are interviews with the actors, the directors, the producers, the above-the-line people, as we call them in the business, the people with money, with fame. That's a Wrap is about the below-the-line people, the rank-and-file folks, the crew members who are on the set day in and day out, 5 to 6 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day, dressing actors, building sets, lighting and shooting those sets, helping to create the dreams that Hollywood is built on. These are the magicians upon whom the magic makers rely upon. These are the folks who make the movies and TV shows that the public loves to spend buku dollars on at the movie theater or stretch out on the couch and binge on. My crew and I believe that you want to know about these folks, these talented, hardworking, intelligent folks, the professionals who get the job done because, well, it needs to get done. My sisters and brothers in the film and TV industry get to have their stories told, finally, and we'll tell those stories here on That's a Wrap. Hi, my name is Jim Irons. I'm your host. We're here today with William Ted Mayer, grip extraordinaire, grip to the stars. Thanks for showing up, Ted. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great to meet you. Okay, a lot of people would have this question. I get this question a lot too, being a grip.
Yeah.
What is a grip? What do you do? What are your jobs?
We do lots of things. Basically, we do everything after the lighting. So you have the lights that come in. We do everything before and after the lighting. We do everything. Before the lighting happens, we do the rigging for the lighting.
Which
rigging? So if you start with a blank slate, let's say a soundstage, you're going to have 35-foot rafters. So you look up and you see these beams, and up there in the permanents, you've got to rig off of that. So you've got a set that's built down below, and everything generally comes from up high. So we're going to put up rigging. We're going to put up basically anything that the lights go in. When we're on the ground, we're using light stands, and so whatever.
that makes you teach class.
I know, right? Yeah, sure. Right, yeah. So we do everything before the lighting happens, the rigging for the lighting, the hardware, and then the lights go in, and then everything that happens after the lights, we will soften them. We're going to make it more beautiful. We'll put in silks. We'll put in diffusion. We'll put in things to cut the lights. We shape the light.
Okay.
So we'll put in siders and bottomers, toppers. So a cider is basically a solid or diffusion that's going to come in from the side to make to cut the light, which is focused on the actor. So the actor's here. This is the light's going there, and so you want it just to be on Mr. Waterglass actor.
Right.
And so this is Mr. Waterglass light, and so you bring in Mr. Cider
To
Mr.
cut it or shape the
Topper.
light.
So you don't have the background lit. You're just kind of concentrating on this beautiful water glass. So the grips are going to be people who are shaping the light and then softening the light, doing things to the light to make this glass of water the most beautiful glass of water they could possibly be. Because otherwise it's just tap water. When we get done, it's like, that's Perrier. I mean, that's some serious stuff. So
Okay, all right.
that's what we do. We make things more beautiful. We kind of put on the finishing touches, along with, it takes hundreds of people sometimes to make this glass of water look like Perrier.
Did you go to school for gripping? Or did you learn on the job?
Kindergarten, we concentrated a lot. I went to school. I went to Eastern Washington University.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a small town near Spokane, Washington. And when I went to school, I went to a regular, a regional college. So I didn't go for film or television.
What did you study?
I started out, my first major was political science.
Okay.
Then I wanted to be an urban planner,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And then I took a class, kind of one of my buddies was like, hey, I'm taking this film class. I'm like, that sounds fun. And then I'm like, wow, this is still college, but I get to run around and shoot music videos and have fun, and I get to be a DJ at the radio station, and I'm getting credit for this. So this is like, it's still college, but it's actually fun college.
Right.
And so for everybody going to college out there, everybody going to college, if you find something that's actually fun and you can make a living at it,
Do it.
do it. Yeah. So I didn't know at the time that I could make a living at it. I thought I wanted to be a director, television director, or really, my first love was editing. And then I realized after a while, editing is great. So editing, you know, you've got all this footage, and you know, you get to shape it and do what you want with it. But editing is very it's a lonely thing. Sometimes you're in a dark room by yourself, or maybe with one other person for hours. And we used to use A/B roll or cut and splice. A/B roll is when you're using videotape, and you kind of, you've got this video, you've got this video cassette. You kind of, you stop this, and you splice into this, and you kind of move it along. And then in cut and splices, you have the actual film. You're cutting it. You're splicing it together. It's very it's a slow process. But that's how they did it, forever.
Right.
And then they brought in a thing called Avid, which is more computer driven, which kind of changed everything. But that was what I was kind of getting out of editing, because I kind of realized that I wanted to be more a part of getting out there and doing things. And you give me a camera and a bunch of college age men and women, young men and women, a camera, and you go out, and the world is this is my, I can do whatever. And so we did music videos, we did sketch, just out on the streets, sketch stuff, and it's like they're giving you equipment. It's like I can go out with this camera, I can do whatever, and it's like, and I'm actually getting great at this, and it's like, this is great. So that's when I found my love, at that time, and it's changed since then. But at the time I was like,
Your love or the business?
Well, the love I thought was going to be the business, and then I realized that everything I learned in college didn't matter. So because you learn the 3-point lighting, which you actually, as a grip, 3-point lighting. You've got your key light, your fill light, your backlight, and so you learn the basics, and those are important. But when you start working in the business, you realize that you're put into whatever you decide to go into. I ended up being a grip. Because one of my buddies from college called, and he called me. He said he was working on a live action video game for a company called Sierra Online. There's a company up in Seattle, and he's like, we need a grip. I didn't know what a grip was. I mean, I'd gone to college for 4 years studying film, television, but I still didn't know what a grip was, because they don't mention us as grips. We're kind of,
Just basic lighting technicians.
Yeah, lighting technicians. Yeah, so you don't really know what a grip was. And I'm like, well, I don't know what a grip was. And he goes, it pays $750 a week. And I'm like, well, I can be a grip. This is back in 95. So I'm going to be a grip. So I went and did this job, met some incredible young people who just graduated from USC, University of Southern California, film school. And so they had graduated at that time. They'd done their internship on a movie called Twister, which was a tornado movie.
Tornado, I remember, yes.
Yeah. And so we all came together, all of us. I was the older one. I think I was probably 25, and they just...
Wow, grandpa.
Yeah, they were like 22, 21-year-old, graduates. And this group of people who I met, I still know today, that many years later. Our director of photography was Matthew Jensen, who went on to be director of photography for True Blood, and did some things on Game of Thrones and Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Director of photography for Wonder Woman. So that was our first little thing.
Good guy.
Yeah, a great guy. And Alex Buono, who was our gaffer, now does a majority or a lot of the short little fakey films you see on Saturday Night Live, or fake commercials, Dick in the Box. those type of,
Right.
we're on a boat, those type of things. So he shoots that and a documentary now. He's a director of photography and directs sometimes and produces that. So all of us started out on this small little show up in Seattle that actually went on for like a few months. None of us knew what we were doing. Had no idea. But we still connect to this day, and we get together and we hang out, and we're still working. We've kind of gone from that little moment to where we are now. And it wasn't for lack of a lot of hard work and trying, and after that happened, a lot of other things happened that bring me where I am today.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
That's nice that you still know those people after all those years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you? So you didn't learn any kind of gripping really in film school. They didn't.
No.
It was a basic. Was it like a basic overall learning experience?
We concentrated on a lot of studio camera stuff. When I got out of college, I had 2 job interviews. One was in Butte, Montana.
Butte, Montana. I've never been to Butte.
Lovely place, Butte. But it's isolated, not a lot in Butte, Montana. And the other job was for a on-air DJ / sales rep at the time for a little AM radio station. And I liked film and television more, but the job for the radio was near Seattle, and I liked Seattle more than Butte. So I ended up outside of Seattle working at a little radio station and doing high school sports and on air, KJTT, AM 1110.
With that smooth jazz voice.
Exactly. So we did, I did that, and it was a different experience. Learning to different aspects of running a radio station. Radio, television, it's all entertainment. Whether you're an on-air television personality or an on-air, like you, sorry, or an on-air, disc jockey or somebody who's doing play-by-play in sports, or you're selling radio, selling anything. But I always said I can sell anything if I believe it.
Right.
And the radio station was a small-town radio station, and I knew that we were reaching the local listeners, and so I could sell that to local merchants. So it was different.
Well, that's cool.
So that's how I kind of went from college, and then I got that call to go do be a grip. Hey, be a grip.
What was your first show that your first movie that you worked on that was like, I'm here, I made it in the film business?
Well, I worked on a lot of bad ones before I made
well, good or bad?
Okay. I worked on a movie called M and Me, which had this one. I thought I made it. And the lead actor was the gentleman who was played across from Mr. Ed. So he wasn't the horse, but he was. He's
Mr. Ed's best friend.
Yeah, he was the actor in Mr. Ed,
Right.
and I'm like, well, I made it. I'm working along. I mean, I'm working with this man. I was the key grip, because when you're younger and you know anything, they say, well, you know more than the other 3 people.
Right,
You're
so
the key grip. You're in
boss.
charge. Yeah.
And the key grip is the boss.
The key grip is running the grip crew, and I learned in a non-union world. There's a union grip world where you belong to union.
Mm-hmm.
You're working on generally bigger productions, and I started in a non-union world, which is you're making $100 or $125. Key grip I was making, I think, $150 a day. But a day is not a 9 to 5 day. A
Right.
day in the film industry is, for us, it's a 14-hour contract. So I'm making $150 for 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you had to negotiate your own overtime deal. So it's like if it goes past 14 hours, then okay.
Right.
Then we're gonna make. I think we're gonna ask for $20 an hour in cash. It's like the next, at the end of the night, we need $20 cash for everything we go over 14 hours.
Right.
So
Right.
this sometimes work 16, 17, 18 hours when you're working these low budget things.
So that's non-union.
Yeah,
Yeah.
M and Me, the Mr. Ed film, I don't think, we didn't work a lot of hours. And at one point I was driving my grandmother's LTD station wagon, and they're like, hey, we really need a car like this for the show. Great, we'll give you an extra $50 if you use your car. This is great.
Right.
I'm here, the car is here, use the car. So this went fine. So we shot this movie for a month, using my car, an extra $50 a day. That's great. And so a month or two after we wrapped the show, they called me up. They're like, "Hey, so we're doing reshoots. Can we use the car?" Sure. No, I'm not doing anything. Use the car. And so they came. They picked up the car, and it's supposed to come back like 3 days later, and the car didn't come back. So I called the reshoots and like, "Hey, so the car's out here," and they're like, "We had a problem." On set. Well, what happened? And they're like, well, the engine caught fire. And we were shooting. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, all right, well then, okay, let me know when things are fixed. And they're like, all right. So I talked to them the next day, and they're like, well, they say that it was a pre-existing condition. I'm like, the engine wasn't on fire when I gave you the car, and so like, well, now it's on fire. So the car's ruined. I'm like, okay, well, they're like, well, what should we do? And I'm like, well, the car is worth about $1,200. So why don't you give me $1,200? We're good. And they're like, oh no, they say it's only worth $500. I'm like, well, it's not. It was a running car, and. They're like, well, we'll get you a rental car. Because they gave me a rental car while they were using my car.
Okay.
So I had a rental car, and they're like, keep the rental car. So this went on for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Wow.
So they're paying for this rental car the entire time, for like a month.
Jeez.
At whatever it was per day. Well over, right now they paid more for this rental car than the $1,200 I wanted for the car, right? So finally they said, how about $1,000? I'm like, fine, and I get to keep the car. Cool. So then I sold the car for $600, got the $1,000, got my $600, had the car, and it's like, but they're stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime.
Yeah,
It's producers in a nutshell.
Right. You end up spending more money trying to save it.
So that was the first non-big movie, but I thought it was big at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, Mr. Ed's co-star.
What was the big one?
The big one. I'd worked on a few things, and I was dating a woman who was working as an art department coordinator on a movie called Kill Bill, which is the Quentin Tarantino movie.
Right.
And so I'd already been working for like 4 years, working on smaller things. And I'm like, well, she told the key grip, who was her ball, great key grip, has worked on most of Tarantino's movies and done a lot of great things. She's like, hey, so my boyfriend, he's a grip. So Eric's like, well, bring him in. So I came out, worked for a day, and then worked for another day, and a few months later, I'm still working on the movie. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm here. And so that was, I guess, the first big thing, and probably one of my most incredibly fun projects I've ever worked on.
Really?
It was big in scale, and Tarantino's an amazing person to work with. His personality is just, he's crazy. He's crazy, but he's fun, and he does things. He does things big, and the movie, which most people couldn't take a year and a half to make. It was 2 movies we were making at the time. We were making Kill Bill 1 and 2, shot at the same time. So we were just shooting one movie. We didn't know it was going to be broken into 2. It was a year and a half.
Wow.
And most production companies are not going to let this happen. They're going to say, okay, so you shot, half a page today or 2/8 of a page today, and you worked for 16 hours. you know, or whatever it was. We usually actually worked like 10 hours. We drank for 4 hours during the day. Every time somebody, there's a tradition in the film industry. You go through 100 rolls of film. Is that what it is?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, 100 rolls of film. You have a champagne.
Right.
You know.
They bring it out on the set.
Well, we shot over 1 million, you know, feet of film, so we're just going through. We were going through like 2 or 3 times a day because we were just constantly shooting thousand roll mags. Back there's a thing called film they used to shoot on. We'll get into that later. Yeah, and so they were just every 100 rolls they'd bring out another drink. So it's like, all right, so now it's. And we went through so many different types of drinks because you know everyone's
Because just keep
going and going, and every time somebody died, I don't know if you've seen Kill Bill, he would bring out a Bloody Mary bar. So
Wait, who would?
Quentin
Oh, Tarantino would bring out
a
during
Bloody Mary bar.
if someone died.
Somebody dies,
Yeah.
they die, Bloody Mary bar.
Okay.
So very little work got done after like noon on every day.
Right. A lot of people died in that movie.
Yeah, it was
So-
bloody. It was a bloody show, but that was fun. That was all kidding aside. We didn't drink that much. We actually did a lot of work, but it was working with someone who, like Bob Richardson, who was the director of photography on the movie. He's a sadistic son of a gun, and he's twisted, but he's a genius. And so working with people like him and working with people like Quentin Tarantino, you kind of see this is. Then I knew I was like, I'm working on a big show.
Right.
These are
Right.
great people I'm working with. You know, the hair and makeup people, the lighting people. Ian Kincaid was the gaffer on that. His crew was amazing, and the lighting he came up with was amazing. And the special effects people were using, you know, macro photography, where you have a bullet that's 8 feet long. You know, a lot of people do these, you know, miniature things, but this is a bullet coming out of a gun that's 6 foot tall, and the bullet's, you know 3 feet long.
Right.
And this photography they use when Uma's, you know, climbing up through
Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman is climbing up through this grave, and it's this, you know, 40-foot wall by 40-foot wide, and she's just climbing up through these things, and you see it on screen. You're like, you know, the vision was amazing to
Yeah.
get these things, but the work that it took to do that, and to be even just a small part of that was awesome. And I knew I knew.
There's a lot of crazy hours in this business. Have you found that working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 5-day weeks, sometimes 6? Do you find does that wreak havoc at all? With your family life, with your better half or your kids?
Yeah.
You miss important things like birthdays and such because of the work hours.
It can. I'm lucky. My wife is, she's also in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you're in the business, we call it business, film business, and shit business. When you're in the business and you work these hours and you're trying to have a family life or a dating life or a social life with someone who's not in the business,
Right.
they don't understand, because you go to work at 6, and why aren't you available at 9 p.m. when you went to work at 6 a.m.?
Right.
And then you come home and you're like, well, no, I don't really, you know, it's the hours, the 70-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
It can be stressful when you're not a normal person who can say, okay, I'm off work and I'm going to go, you know, when you're going to work the next day, you have to get up at 8 to be there at 9. It's not
a 9-to-5 job.
No, and sometimes you start work at 6 a.m. on a Monday, and then your call is 2 p.m. on a Friday, and then you're not off until 4 a.m. on a Saturday. Then Saturday's shut. You're sleeping, trying to get ready for a 6 a.m. call on Monday. So the hours can be brutal. Sometimes dangerous.
Yes.
I remember working on a show up in Simi Valley, and we were shooting nights out in Simi Valley. It was supposed to be Afghanistan. Simi Valley, Afghanistan.
Same thing. They look so similar.
Pretty much. So we were shooting all night, got off, probably went to work at 3 p.m., got off at 6 a.m.
Mhm.
and driving home. So driving home, I live in Sherman Oaks, so it's not a far drive.
Mhm.
Seaview Valley to Sherman Oaks should take you, at that hour, should take 30 minutes.
Right.
So I remember driving and doing a back road, taking a back road, and driving. And then I knew it was 6 when we got off. And I was driving, and then I woke up, and I was at a stoplight,
Why?
and it was 6:40 in the morning. Somebody had honked behind me,
Right.
and so I fall asleep with my foot on the brake. So for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
Wow, really?
Sleeping there. Someone woke me up, and I'm like, well, now I'm refreshed.
That's a little scary.
To start the day.
That's a little frightening.
And so it didn't happen to me, but I know friends, coworkers over the years who
Right.
lost their lives, been paralyzed,
Right.
gone off a cliff.
Because of the long hours, it didn't
Long
happen
hours.
to home.
And also, you work the long hours, then you've got a short weekend. So
Right.
you work for this many hours, and you've got, okay, so I go out Saturday, and then, because you've got just this much time to go and enjoy your life. So
Right.
you go out, you're having fun, and then you're exhausted from everything, and then it all builds up. So it's glamorous.
Sounds like
It
it.
can sometimes be hard on the family, hard on your bodies.
Right.
But like I said, I'm lucky. My wife is also in the business. She
Right.
understands. And so we tend to share time. We have 2 young daughters, 9-year-old and 6-year-old daughter. And she works and I work. We try not to overlap too much.
Right.
So sometimes I'll take a month or 2 off. She'll take a month or 2 off. And kind of try to keep the balance. So one of us is there, and we don't maybe work year round. But I'm lucky because we're
She
together,
understands. Right.
and we can kind of go together towards the common goal. We never see each other, but
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot to try to keep the family together
Yeah.
when you're doing hours like
Yeah.
that. That's pretty
Yeah.
crazy. So it's a good thing that she understands. Good when she's in the business too,
Yeah.
because she gets it.
yeah.
She's not screaming at you. Where were you last night? I said, well, I was working. I was working.
She's like, "How was your work last night?"
Do you find that you get along well with people in your own crew, your own department, and overall people in the film crew, the film set overall? Do you find if you ever find there's like rifts in friendships or relationships on set?
Well, when you work on a movie's usually like a few months,
Right.
3 or 4 months. Television show, like a full episodic 20 episode show, we start prepping in August. You go until May, June. I mean, you're doing 10 months
Right.
with the same people every day. And a lot of times when you're on a television show, like a 3-camera, there are different types of television shows. You have the multi-camera sitcoms,
Mm-hmm.
which are different. What I traditionally worked on over the years are either feature films or multicam television shows where you shoot them like a feature film, but you're usually more stage-centric. You spend more of your time on a soundstage at a studio lot like Sony or Paramount
Mhm.
or Warner Brothers. So you spend more of your time, or a warehouse somewhere in Van Nuys. You spend more of your time on a soundstage, and less of your time out on the road.
Right. Right.
So when you spend that much time together, it's a unique situation because you're spending more time with your crew members than you are with your family.
Yeah.
So they become de facto your family.
Mm-hmm.
And you find, sometimes you meet people who you're friends with, and you become friends over the years, and you choose incredibly to spend time with them outside of the 14 hours, a day, and the 70 hours a week you're spending with them at work. You're like, I'm gonna still go hang out with them afterwards.
Right. Well, that speaks well about the
Yeah.
relationship that you do like each other.
Exactly. So a lot of times you build friendships, you build bonds, but sometimes in a closed environment, for that many hours. And if it goes on for season 1, 2, 3, if you're lucky enough to have a show go that many seasons, then there are also some, so much time
Good friction.
in a closed environment together that sometimes there's frictions, but it's like your brother or your sister or whoever. Growing up, you're going to have these moments where, oh my gosh, why are you touching my things? Why are why are you always talking like that?
Right.
Mr. Irons, why are you always
Stop
Will
talking.
you just stop talking? So but for the most part, you'll find people that you click with.
Right.
Like after a while, you'll say, okay, these are my people. In your crew, or even outside your crew. I'm a grip. A lot of times I work as a best boy.
And best boy is.
The best boy is kind of in charge of. You've got the key grip, who is the head of the grip department.
Mhm.
He's the on-set person in charge of all the gripping. He works in conjunction with the director of photography and the gaffer. The gaffer is director of lighting. Director of photography is director of photography. And so they work along with key grip, who kind of helps to implement their plan for the visual aspects of the show. And the best boy is the person who's in charge of manpower and equipment. So he makes sure that you have the equipment you need. If you have cranes, if you have camera cranes, if you have things that need to be ordered, if you have a day where you need extra manpower, he's in charge of hiring the men or women who come in, his crew, to help do the job. So as a best boy, a lot of times it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of dealing with equipment. Am I moving my hands too much? Do you find that
Are you trying to hypnotize?
Yeah. So the best boy does those things, and so as a best boy, you're kind of a boss.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be as chummy.
Right.
You can't be like, hey, let's go, and the boss is an asshole. Like, wait, I'm the boss. You can't.
You have to be a little more
yeah,
stern.
It's a little more stern. So a lot of times you don't get to be as close with the people you're working with. So a lot of times you are friends with other department heads.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find the best boy electric, or the first AC, or the prop, the head prop person, or you kind of become friends with the different departments heads, and you're gonna find people you like, people that are fun, people
Right.
that make your job and life for 14 hours on set easier.
Right.
Sometimes you'll find some that make it more difficult, and it's life.
It sounds like it.
man.
It's a life to do.
It is a life.
Yeah.
It is a life.
Have you ever worked on a show that TV or movie where the politics of that particular show, that script, were a bit contrary to yours, to your outlook of life? You ever had a problem with that?
Well, I worked on the Dick Cheney project. I'm trying to think exactly. I don't know if I have.
Yeah. It was never a show that you said, I don't think I read this script, I don't think I can do this. It's just,
No.
it's contrary to what I believe.
What's interesting is my physical therapist, not my therapist, my other therapist.
Not
My
your physical
my physical therapist asked me, hey, so what are some cool things you worked on? I'm like, well, I worked on, I mentioned Kill Bill, and he's like, oh man, I could never watch one of his movies.
Maybe
I couldn't-
Tarantino.
Yeah, I couldn't. They're just so violent. Yeah, it's it's kind of this is not reality. We're not. A lot of times you have to look at it's almost a comic books. You're okay with Marvel. You're okay with superheroes and flying, and you're okay with these things. But this otherworldly violence bothers some people.
Mhm.
So I understand his view, and I'm not discounting it. I think in his view, he can't watch that. He couldn't actively. He would never work on something like that.
Right.
I worked. You're gonna edit this out later, but I worked on a Cinemax
Skinemax.
project years ago. It was Emmanuel
Mhm.
2000.
I recall that movie.
Yeah, Emmanuel in Space. So I worked on this project, which is not pornography, but it's kissy, touchy,
Erotic.
you know, bare breasts and
Right.
such. And there was a dolly grip, really good dolly grip. You know his name, Chuck. I won't say his last name, but he told me, I asked him if he wanted to work on this job because I knew he was a really good dolly grip.
Mhm.
And so I said, hey, would you like to work on this? And he said, yeah. And so then he found out what it was, and he's like, oh, I can't do this. You know, it would disappoint my mother and myself if I worked on this project. I'm like, okay, this is your choice.
Mhm.
I understand. And so I've seen other people who were unable to work on our project because they disagreed with their philosophy or their take on it.
Right, right.
But me personally,
Do anything.
yeah.
I think a lot of film people are kind
Yeah.
of whores in that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things.
Okay.
There are some things. I'm not working on snuff films. I'm not. You know.
Yeah.
I'm not. There are certain things. It has to be a project that I kind of think is really cool, or it pays a lot of money.
Do you feel like the business has affected your physical or mental health at all? Have you, aside from the story where you did the twitch, aside from falling asleep behind the wheel, was there any other time that the hours affected you adversely?
It's interesting. I mentioned it earlier about family, right? And how about my wife is in business, I'm in a business. Sometimes it's worse. Locations are tough.
Mm-hmm. Shooting on location.
Shooting on locations. And I've been in situations where I've worked in New Mexico, which isn't not that far from Los Angeles, but you're not commuting home anymore.
Yeah.
My wife has worked on shows in Georgia and Nashville. I worked in shows in North Carolina and Mexico. We worked on shows. Sometimes we try to work most of the time together or travel together. Like if I'm not working, she's working. Well, I'm gonna go and now that we have the daughters, I'm gonna watch the daughters, or she'll do the same, and we kind of do this. But when you're separated, I'm working in Los Angeles, she's working in New Mexico or somewhere in the middle of California that you don't really know.
Right.
Just El Centro. Places where you can't get to within a day's drive.
Yeah.
You can't get to wherever it is. If it's Nashville, or when you're separated, it's very difficult on the family. And what I've found, and I'm sure later when you talk to more women in the film industry, you're going to learn that things for women in the film industry can be extremely difficult as far as being in a situation where they're working in a mostly men-driven business.
Mm-hmm.
And so my wife has been in situations where, and not just her, but a lot of women have been in situations where they're put in uncomfortable situations because the men who are in charge of their department, the show, the industry as a whole, it was for a long time an old boys club and just kind of like a sophomore attitude on set where things are just kind of, you say things loosely, you do things loosely, and
Right.
it just kind of has become like that, or was for forever. And so one time my wife was on location and the director was making inappropriate advances towards her. And I was not in a place where I was home with my daughters.
Mhm.
And I couldn't go there, and what am I gonna do?
Right.
It's like, she's an adult, she's a person who's, can take care of herself, but it was a very frustrating, infuriating situation to be separated at this length and not be able to be with the one who, is part of your family and
Right.
who who you love more than anything, and try to help them out.
Right.
And so sometimes it's difficult for the separation being there when you can't be with your family, you can't be there as a support mechanism for them. So that's the one time where I felt like the business, but it could have happened if she was an executive at Google and
Right.
she was on doing a job in Colorado, and she was away, and one of her bosses did the same thing. I guess it's a different business.
Right.
And sometimes you think it's unique, but it's really kind of life.
Has she had other experiences, other bad experiences?
All women.
Sexist?
Yeah, you could do 5, 10, 20 segments on this program, talking to women who in our business who come across situations where they're just and sometimes people are unaware of it because they've done things the same way. And it's working as in any department other than hair, makeup, and for the most part wardrobe. Most of the other departments are 80% men.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so you've got it's just happened over the years where it's the way things are. So you kind of we tell these jokes and we say these things, and you're Donald Trump, grab him by the it's but we all should be better than that, and
Yeah.
we all I think will be.
But that's the way it is, you're saying,
That's the way it is.
and so we work around it.
And show business, people say, okay, these producers, Weinstein, they've done these things, and it is a culture of these are gods, the casting room couch. So
Right.
I know we've gone on a tangent here, but I think it's an important subject.
I think so. It's a very important subject. Have you experienced anything?
Actually, I have.
I think so. Okay.
Actually, one time I was working on a show. Me too. And I was working on a show, and I dated a producer, and we dated, but then I decided that I didn't want to date her.
Mhm.
We didn't get along. It was kind of not really jiving, and so I said, I think we should not see each other. She's like, I think you shouldn't work on the show anymore. And
Really?
at that time, I was like, well, okay, I guess I won't work on the show anymore.
Yeah.
And
So she effectively
she fired
got
me
rid of
because,
you.
yeah, she fired me because I didn't want to date her anymore.
Right.
At that time, we were like, okay, well, I guess should have kept dating her. No, yeah, so it happens, but in comparison,
It's pale.
yeah,
compared
it's
to,
in comparison.
yeah. Talking about the hours and such, they are kind of long and crappy and whatnot, but do you like your job?
Do I like my job?
Do you like?
Sometimes I love my job.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes posture.
Posture. Everybody straight up.
Sometimes I love my job.
Yes.
Sometimes I'm not as big a fan of my job. You go through stages when you're a wily veteran, weathered,
Seasoned.
When you first get in the film industry and you're young, say you're 25,
Mhm.
and you're in Hollywood, man, and you're working with, Mr. Ed's co-star. And we gotta find out his name. Somebody look that up. So when you're first in the business and you're working with a group of young men and women who they're all excited
Mhm.
because you're making movies. You and I are the television generation. Now it's more of the internet, Snapchat, Instagram,
Right.
internet generation. But we're a television generation. You're making television, you're making films.
Films.
You're making films. You don't care that you're working this many hours. You don't care that you don't care about seeing your family. You're young,
You're making movies.
you're making movies. And the first time you go to your first screening, whether it's a student film screening or whether it's just something, a little joint that they found a screening, they're going to show you, you're going to see your name in lights. You see your
Right.
name in the credits.
Right.
Key grip, head makeup, hair and makeup, James Hyde.
Oh.
So when you're younger, when you're first starting, yes, it's very exciting.
Right.
After 10, 15 years, you hit a lull. I think everybody does, where you either after 10 years or so, you come to a point where you're like, I want to start a family, I want to have a stable relationship, I want to be able to do more with my life than wake up, go to work, come home, go to sleep,
Right.
go to work, come home, go to sleep, and have a great time making movies. But at some point, I think everybody comes to a point where they say, where they're 35, they've been in the business for 10 years, 15 years, they're like, do I want to do this for the next 10, 15, 20 years? Make a decision. So there were points along the way where I wasn't working on things that I was enjoying so much.
Right.
You get caught in a rut where you're working on shows that aren't satisfying and you maybe aren't as happy every day. You're
Right.
going through the motions.
Right.
And then you come across a movie or a television show, like I did in 2001 with a show called Scrubs,
Right.
which kind of, it was fun again, working with people I love, working on a show which you're on set every day and you're stifling your laughs. You're around creators from Bill Lawrence, the producer, down to all the actors, to the crew. And every day you show up saying, I want to be here. This is fun.
Right.
And so that happened. And I met this group of people. And once again, after 7 years in the business, I was having fun again. And it was kind of every once in a while you get a gem. And
Right.
it kind of says, okay, and that show went for 6, 7 seasons.
It went on for a while,
eight if
yeah.
you count the last one that
Yeah.
nobody watched. But it was, sorry, nobody watched it. And it was just fun. And I met so many people on that show who are, like on my first show, who are still part of my life,
Right.
who just made coming to work every day it didn't matter if you were there for 14 hours, because you were
Just having fun.
having fun. And we would work for 12, 13, 14 hours and then say, let's go out for another couple hours.
Again, speaks very well
Yeah.
about the relationship between
Because
people.
these were people who you enjoyed being with every day. So that was a life changer. And I met my wife on that trip too.
Yes, I was gonna ask you. Tell me the story of proposing to your wife.
All right. So
This is when you were working on Scrubs.
yeah, I'd been working on the show for a couple of seasons, and I was going back and forth between a show called Nip Tuck and Scrubs. So their seasons kind of overlapped by a bit. So
Okay.
Nip Tuck was an FX show, and I would work on that with a really great crew as well. It was Ryan Murphy's show. And I would work on that show, and that show would finish probably in June. And Scrubs had already been started, or I guess it would finish in, actually I'm trying to think about it, it would finish in September.
Mhm.
And Scrubs had already been going for a month or two.
Okay.
And then Scrubs would go, and so I'd kind of go back and forth. And so after a few seasons, I dated a woman, the woman I was dating on Kill Bill, but we had ended our relationship.
Right.
And
Like getting fired.
we fired each other.
Mm.
And I was finishing up Nip Tuck and was going on to Scrubs. And my friend Graham McPherson from Liverpool, he was a nice, strong grip. And I said, hey, Graham, I'm single. Are there any young ladies on the show I have not met? He said, well, there's a new sound girl. Her name is Anna. She's a lovely young lass. This is not exactly how the story went.
That's the worst accent.
Well, yeah, it's not exactly how the story went or the accent went. But he said, Anna. And so I went over and I introduced myself to Anna. Anna wanted nothing to do with me because she was actually doing her job at the time. She was wiring somebody. She was, putting, as a utility sound person, your job is crazy. She's all over. We had multiple actors she's trying to take care of, and me.
And you're like,
hi. How are you? My name's Ted. I'll be your grip today. She's like, what? Why are you talking to me? So after layering around corners and whatever for a few weeks, she consented to go out with me, and we dated for that season. And at the end of that season, or the beginning of the next season, I proposed to her. And the way I did it was on set. Like I said, the crew was amazing. The producer, Bill Lawrence, was an amazing person. I went into Bill's office because you could go into Bill's office. As a grip on the show, you could knock on the door, say, hi, Bill. And I said, I want to propose to Hannah. Can you help me make this happen in an amazing way? And he said, anything.
did you already have the plan set up?
I did. I had the plan set up. So I said I talked to Zach Bridle, who was the lead actor on the show, and Donald Faison, and they both agreed to help me propose to my wife. So I'd written a script. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And a couple weeks later, on her birthday, I was prepared to propose her the script. And Donald and Zach had read the script.
And this is all going to be on set?
It was all going to be on set. It was going to be great. She was going to be clueless, because she was clueless, Donald Faison.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So she was going to be booming this scene, but she wasn't going to know what was going on, because they were going to say, oh, we got to shoot this from the next episode. So earlier in the day, I get a call from Randall, who I think it was Randall, who was our producer on the show. And he said, hey, so we've changed up the schedule. So the last scene up isn't going to be with Donald and Zach anymore. It's going to be with John C. McGinley and Zach. And I'm like, oh, that screws everything up. And this is early in the morning, because it was supposed to be, because they canceled that scene. It was going to be with Donald and Zach. And Donald wasn't going to be in the show at all that day. And so I needed them to do this. So I'm like, well, rewrite. So first of all, I got on the phone and I said, can you connect me with John C. McGinley, who's a great actor, Office Space. He's been in a
Platoon.
Yeah, he's an amazing actor. And if you've ever watched Scrubs, he's amazing in that as well.
Yes.
And so I called John C. McGinley. I'm like, hi, John, don't know you that well. I've worked with you for a while, but we haven't talked that much. You know Anna, and I want to propose to her, and can you help me out? If I write a scene, will you help me propose to her? And he said, no problem. So I wrote John C. McGinley. If you ever watch Scrubs, he does these monologues that are like a page and a half long, and he'll go on forever. And so I'm just writing. And I'm like, this is in the style of Scrubs. I'm writing this thing. I didn't even think about how hard this would be for anybody to learn this while doing their job on a show at the last minute. But at the end of the day, if you go to Ted and Anna, get engaged on the set of Scrubs, you can see that John C. McGinley on YouTube. You can see that John C. McGinley memorized this scene while working an entire day. And John C. McGinley and Zach Braff helped me propose to my wife. And she was clueless as she was booming a scene. She had no idea what was going on. And all of a sudden, I walked in.
And this is all on camera.
This is all on camera. It wasn't on the show, but I think there were some DVD extras. You can see it as well. And she said yes. And that was...
That's crazy. And she had no idea.
She had no idea.
She was out there with the boom, and then you just walked in.
And I walked in, and it was amazing. And what that crew did for me just shows how much sometimes you develop a family.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's funny. That is, it was a good cruise. I day played on it a little bit.
I remember.
Yeah, and everybody was really super nice.
Yeah.
It was just So I can see them saying, consenting to something like that. So, oh yeah, we'll do it.
And Randall, the producer, ended up being my officiant at my wedding. He was the guy who married us.
Oh really?
Randall Winston.
Well, that's kind of
Yeah.
cool. Keep it in the family.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier, you mentioned earlier something about working in Mexico. Have you ever done a lot of shows? Have you done shows outside of the country or?
Mexico.
And Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah, not a lot out of the country.
Yeah.
Although,
Around?
if you consider North Carolina out of the country. Or,
It might be so.
yeah, shooting things, working on projects in different parts of the country, it's a different vibe. A lot of times when I was younger, working non-union, like we'd go to, I shot a movie called Clowns in North Carolina, Clowns. And it was a low budget, non-union, and this is back in '97. And during the production, it became clear that there was a hurricane coming.
Come on.
But the producers, whoever decided, no, we're gonna keep shooting.
Oh wow. Really?
And so at some point, we had a circus tent with however many local people they could hire holding it down.
Oh my God.
Hurricane winds coming through. And look over at the sound person as the winds are just like howling through, and I'm like, well, if this movie was called Mimes, we'd be fine, but there's no way they're going to be able to get any sound. So I thought that was fun.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. So that
How long
was,
ago was that?
That was 97. It was
97.
hurricane, whatever the hell it was big.
That's crazy.
And we were in Raleigh. But the thing about shooting in a small town is you meet all these people who aren't Hollywood. It's, especially back then. And everybody wants to be part of it.
Right.
And so going out as a crew, going out, you meet all these, the locals who are just excited to be part of this experience.
Right.
And they want to be part of Hollywood. Even shooting in Barstow, which is not far from Los Angeles, but you go to Barstow and you get these people who are like, hey, Hollywood's here.
Yeah.
And it's a different experience. Everybody's more welcoming.
Yes.
Sometimes when you're shooting in Los Angeles, you're shooting these neighborhoods and they're like, get off my lawn, it's
You'd be a little jaded.
yeah, they're a little jaded. They're like, why are you parked in front of my house? I should get $1,000 a day for you parking here.
Right.
And it's different. When you go across parts of the United States that don't have that regularly, it's kind of a different, fun change to have. People realize that, this is kind of where the roots are.
Right.
And it's fun.
We were shooting this TV show about a year ago in Monterey, up north.
Yeah.
And people were they loved it. They were there. Oh, there was this group of people that were there all day. We got there at 7 in the morning shooting, and we had to move them around because moving camera positions and stuff. So they had moved, and they were so ecstatic. They were there till 4 or 5 in the evening.
Yeah.
And it's much different than when you shoot here. You shoot here, people, like you said, they yell at you to get off the lawn, and it's,
Sometimes even when you're not shooting something, they're like,
people just have to yell. That's funny. You go to a lot of movies yourself? Do you like movies?
I do. I find with a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, I go to a lot of animated movies.
Right.
So ask me about any Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks animated movie, I can give you the breakdown.
Right.
Aladdin.
So good. So good.
In fact, what are you doing here? You were just in that bottle. And
Well, the reason I ask is because there's a lot of people that are in this business that don't like this business. They work in it and they're like, they were grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So a lot of times their uncles worked in the business or their dad worked in the business, so they got a job in the business. And it's just and then you meet people who truly want to be in the business. You know, they go to school, they study, they came out here specifically for film. Because a lot of people, there's a contingent in this business that does not like working in this business. It's a job.
Yeah,
It's just a job.
it can be.
Yeah.
It can be just a job. I was a mix of the two. My great uncle, Ted Hamilton, worked on Gunsmoke.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in his garage in Palm Springs and thinking, wow, he's got these pictures of all these actors.
Right.
40s, 50s, 60s. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was 6'6". He was
Oh, wow.
he was a mountain of a man. And he told me the story about when he was working on Gunsmoke and Burt Reynolds. They didn't have safety first. They didn't have time to bring in stunt pads or anything, and they're like, "Well, Ted, why don't you just?" He was getting thrown down a bar like this one.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see it shooting. So he was getting thrown down a bar, and they're like, "Well, we don't have time to bring in stunt pads. Just catch him." And so they threw him down. He caught him, and he messed up his back, and he was done. He was done. Burt Reynolds sent him flowers, and he was.
We got flowers for Burt Reynolds. That's something.
And that was it.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So that was part of what drove me. It was like, well, this is cool, Hollywood.
Right.
But part of it, that was probably the impetus. And then when I started doing it, I just had fun. I just had fun.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people who are sons, daughters of film workers,
Yeah.
and they're like, well, if you can't do anything else,
Get in film.
you can do this. You don't necessarily need a college degree. You
Yeah.
can get in when you're younger. Sometimes you can learn more on the job than you do in college. I think college is important for a number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
More socializing and kind of becoming the person you are and getting to know the people you want to be
Right.
with, and learning things that have nothing to do with what you're going to do later in life. But I think that's important. That's
Well, did you have anything that when you went to film school, was there anything that you learned that you brought over into the real world of filmmaking? You mentioned earlier this, like, it doesn't seem like there was anything that you learned that transferred over.
I say that, but it's not true, because when I pointed out earlier, 3-point lighting and knowing how lighting works.
Right.
Because there are a lot of people who work in our industry who are pigeonholed into one job, and
Right.
they do their things, and that's fine. They very much concentrate on one thing or another, whatever their craft is. But I think if you're involved with lighting, say
Right.
you're an electrician, an on-set electrician, lighting technician, or you're a grip, or you're a dolly grip, or you're any member of the camera department, I think it's important to understand how basic lighting works.
Yes.
Because when you understand how lighting works, when you're on set doing your job, rather than listening and only hearing what's coming into your headset or listening to the orders that are being barked, you know when you go in what these lights are supposed to be doing,
Right.
what it's supposed to look like, what the basic concept of lighting should be.
Right.
And even though it's changed and things have varied and you know things are different, things remain the same. It still comes back to the basics of how to light a set.
And you
so
did learn that. at
I
school.
learned that, and I learned things about camera. I learned things about how to loading film.
Right.
I learned things about different aspects, and I think that you could learn that in a different way. You can learn it on the job
Mm-hmm.
in some sort of an apprenticeship, an internship. But going to college is one way to learn that, and I think it's important to have that background, because a lot of times you work with people who don't know what they're doing, so they're out there listening and trying to do things when somebody who knows the job,
Right.
who's been doing it, even not that long, but somebody who has a basic background knows, okay, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And so they go in knowing what the lights are supposed to be doing, knowing what they're supposed to be doing to shape the light. So they go in, they do their job, and it makes it easier on the people who are calling the shots, because they don't have to worry about that person. They don't have to worry about what they're doing, because they know that they have a basic concept of what needs to be done, and then they can tweak it for whatever it looks like on camera. They didn't used to have monitors that gave you exactly what it looked like. It was people using their eyes,
Right.
using
Eyeball
light
and everything.
readers, and understanding that this is what we're going for, and they had to actually look at things. And now it's anyway.
No, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, do you feel that you have a talent for it? You want to get into the business? You feel you have you had a talent for it,
Oh,
and that's why you
Extremely
got in.
Extremely talented.
Let's keep it to the film. Let's keep it to the film business. Do you feel?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, do you feel like you're a part of the process when you're on a film set,
Sometimes
or do you feel you're just like a worker? You're just
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I say during the day, men and women who are key grips in this business, and they are able to make a call, and they come up with something like that,
Mhm.
where the director of photography or the producers say, we need this, and we need it.
right.
And when you're able to come up with something that gets the job done quickly, and otherwise the production is grinding to a halt,
Mhm.
and everybody's waiting around. But when these creative people, who sometimes I've been, sometimes I'm part of a crew,
Mhm.
and even when you're part of a 10-man crew, and your cue grip, she says, let's do this, and you are able to make it happen
Mhm.
like that, and then they're like, hey, problem solved,
Got it
we're
done.
moving on.
Yeah.
And then those are moments where you're like, we made this happen.
Yeah.
And other times, just when you're on the dolly and working on The Hangover 2. And we had this scene where I got thrown on the dolly, and I wasn't a regular dolly grip, but they're like, you're in there because the dolly grip has to do whatever he's doing. Was that another shot? So I had this shot where I've got this, and he wakes up in the hotel in Bangkok, and he's like, coming to. And he's got a tattoo on his face, and just, things are bad. And it's this scene where it's like, and I've got to, and you don't think about it, it's a little thing, but it's right here, but you've got to, you're controlling this camera. It weighs a lot, and it's coming down, and it's going down so quickly, and you've got to get it there, and feather it off so it's like not bouncing, it's just,
And not smashing the actor in
and
the
not
face.
smashing the actor in the face, which is important. Ed Helms, he's an American treasure. We don't want to actually smash his face. And so you do this, it's got to be perfect. And to be able to do that, you're like, okay, I did that. You see it in the movie, you're like, that was me.
Right.
Me, the camera operator, everybody involved, but I was part of that, which
Part of
was
that whole process.
cool.
Yeah.
And so you're like, all right,
That's terrific.
yeah. Sometimes you do things that are monotonous, and
Right.
you're gelling frames for hours a day, prep and wrap and
Just mindless
fun stuff.
mindless work.
Yeah.
Because of all the knowledge you have, the experience and whatnot, when you go see a movie, an animated movie,
That's
does it ruin the experience for you because you know what's going on, or are you able to just have a blank mind and watch it and say, oh, okay, this is great, are you thinking like, oh, the camera's here, the
It's
lighting's
interesting.
bad? and-
It's interesting. I find that for me, I'll go in and watch any movie, bad movies,
Mhm.
good movies. I've only been really upset twice at a movie because I read the book
No,
and they did horrible things to the movie. Had nothing to
nothing
do
to do with the technique.
with what it looked like cinematically.
Okay.
But Battlefield Earth ruined. And
You're the one person
Ready
who saw
Player One, Steven Spielberg, you hack. Sorry.
Never done a damn good thing in his life.
Exactly. But back to your question. So I'm less critical watching a movie than my wife is. My wife will find things, and she's a sound person, so she.
Sound meaning sound like.
She does
not
production
sound
sound.
like,
And
yeah.
what I found with sound people is that they all have an incredible ability to hear things that I can't hear.
The
All of them.
high-pitched dog whistle.
Especially my wife. She can hear things I can't hear. And so when she's listening to a movie or watching a television show, she will point out sound issues. And then things that I should notice, like the things visually on the screen, she notices them, I don't either. Because I don't care, I get washed over with whatever.
It's the story.
She'll be like, there was a camera crane in that shot. And boom, just hit him in the face. You didn't see that? No, I was just concentrating on the laughs. So a lot of times, there used to be a saying when televisions were small, it's like, if they can notice that on their 25-inch TV screen, they're not really paying attention to the comedy surrounding them.
Right.
And I tend to concentrate more on things. I let everything go because I know I'm not a critical film watcher because of what I've done. My wife, she should really be here.
Well, maybe
much better.
we'll get her next time. I'll call her up. I got her number. Have you ever done anything stupid on set? Like knocked over a light or walked into a shot when they're shooting?
Man, okay. Here, there are a couple of times, many times actually. Let's get into these. So I was working on Running with Scissors, Ryan Murphy production, and I don't know, Hollywood people are stupid. People that live in California and Los Angeles and Hollywood, all the stories you've heard about us are true. We're all idiots. So there's this fad that's been going on off and on for the last 10 years. This cayenne pepper lemon fast, right?
Right.
These are things that if you work in the office or you work somewhere in a semi-sedentary workplace, you can do that. You can drink cayenne pepper and lemon juice and go home. You're not going to die. If you're a grip where you need to lift things and do things, and you decide to not eat for 5 days and drink nothing but cayenne pepper and lemon juice, and then get onto an apple box because you're too lazy to get a ladder, OSHA, singer. So you go and get an apple box to go and put something into a wall, and then you pass out onto Annette Bening, who is standing there, and she catches you like you're a gentle flower, and lays you down, and you smile as you look up, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And so that was dumb. Did that. Oh gosh, other things. Yeah. So Scrubs. That's a show that I worked on for seasons, but my first day on Scrubs, it was a late night. We were out in the parking lot, and we were doing a menace arm. A menace arm is you have a light on the end of a 20-foot piece of pipe. You have a large stand, mambo combo in this case. You have a ratchet trap. You have some sandbags to cantilever it. And me and Graham McPherson, who introduced me to my wife, wonderful man. I can do his accent, no accent, stuff like that at all. Liverpool, no, nothing. So at one point, he's supposed to, I think, grab the ratchet strap, and I'm supposed to be in charge of the stand, right? So I'm on the stand, and I thought he was on the ratchet strap. And so what happened was I took the stand up, and the ratchet strap hadn't been done yet because he wasn't there yet. And the light came down like this. And it was only a tweeny small light, but it banged into this classic 1975 Volvo.
Ooh.
Not really classic. So it hit the floor. I yank it up. I'm like, where the heck is Graham? I thought I was going to be fired. Apparently, the key grip, Sean Kroll, lovely man, wanted to fire me, but they couldn't find anybody for the next day, so I just stayed on for the next 5 years. And that's what happens sometimes. If they can't find somebody, you just...
That's you lucked out. You're the right place,
Yeah.
right time.
There you go.
That's not bad. Okay. Before we go, I just want to say, William Ted Mayer has been our guest. I want to thank you a lot.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Thanks for showing up, and I'll see you on set somewhere.
Yeah, see you in the big screen.
See you in the big screen.
Yeah, 20 pictures.
All right. Thanks. Hi, Jim Crash Irons here. I'd just like to give a quick shout out to John Fregoso and the owner of the Snake Pit and all the hard-working workers who work here for allowing us to use their beautiful whiskey bar and restaurant. Thank you, Crystal and Noah and everyone else. You guys are fantastic. If you guys ever get a chance to come down to Melrose and hang out at Snake Pit, I suggest it. Great food, good drinks, good people. Again, thank you guys very much. Thank you, Snake Pit.